Hey, what is up everybody? It is Gamebeto Gaming. Welcome to my first ever, well, maybe second ever tier list video. Today is Halloween themed. Of course video game themed, because what would we be doing here if not playing a little games? I scrubbed through all of my favorite horror games, scrubbed through and found all my favorite scary enemies that always haunted me as a child growing up and since then. So here I've collected about 50 or so images of characters, and I'm gonna throw them on this little scale right here. Everybody knows how this works. It's S through F. I'm gonna judge this kind of on the character themselves and also how scared, how creeped out they make me feel. I don't have these categorized in any order, and I hope I remember all these people's names because I don't have reference to any of these. I'm sure I'm missing a lot. I actually purposely left out some things that most people consider scary and enemies in video games because I've never truly had an experience with them. There's a few that slip through the cracks that I still find scary just even seeing them from a distance, but most of these I've run into naturally in video games. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's start with a classic. Everybody knows this guy. If you don't, educate yourself a little bit. This is the tank from Left 4 Dead, the famous video game. The tank's probably one of my biggest fears in terms of big guys coming at you with loud triumphant music behind them. I think the Big Daddy kind of follows into that category as well. But I'm thinking tanks, so you never like to hear the music when a tank comes around. There's a certain amount of fear that just wells up inside you a little bit, right in your chest area. So I think we're going to put them in A, is what I'm trying to say there. While we're on Left 4 Dead, I see the witch peeking at me here. The witch is probably the next scariest enemy from Left 4 Dead in terms of what they do to the player, especially if you play on expert. But I think she's a little bit less scary than the tank, actually. Because you can crown her, which just means you can one-shot her with an auto-shotty. So you can really one-shot her. You have to get pretty lucky, but it is possible. You can't one-shot a tank. That's insane. Moving on from Left 4 Dead, I see this guy peeking at me. And this is specifically King K. Rool from Donkey Kong 64. I put him here because this version of him, the boxing version, the final boss version of King K. Rool, sucks. I'd put him in F in terms of scariness because it took all the fear I had of him right out when he, stepped out in this one-piece jumpsuit he has on. But previously to the final boss, when I was a wee little lad and I could never get to the final boss of Donkey Kong 64, I always saw him in the cutscenes just menacingly laughing at me while sitting in this throne. So he was always pretty terrifying to me, especially in that game. But for that fact alone that he just falls apart in the latter half of the game, we'll throw him in D tier. Next we have is your boy, the one and only, the guy who got way too popular, found the fame, found a fortune, and fell off. Nobody's heard of this guy in years. Slender. And I'm going to base the one off the original game, Slender the 8 Pages. Not Slender the Arrival or whatever that fucking walking simulator of a game was. Basing it off the original appearance of Homeboy. I'd say he's a solid C. I wouldn't put him on the same level as the Witch. I think in terms of a cultural phenomenon, he's at least a C tier. He produced one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. So you gotta give him credit there. This is a fish. This is a scary fish. It's terrifying, actually. It's a fish from Banjo-Tooie, which of course is the sequel to Banjo-Kazooie, and it's just an enemy that you he's like a level entrance. You break his teeth here, and you enter his mouth, but he's like 10 times the size of the player, and he's huge, and he looks like that. And just already water environments in old Nintendo 64 games just don't work for me in terms of not being scary. I'm putting this guy pretty high up on the list. I'd say he's about as scary as the Witch. Moving right along, speaking of water, I think we all share common phobia, at least when it comes to games. Most scenarios in the water suck, one, because the controls suck, but also suck, two, because it's the most frightening part of a game when stuff starts coming at you. Usually your visibility in the water isn't great, so already you're playing at a disadvantage. in the ocean or in any water segment. And if you plop any sort of enemy into a water level, it's automatically going to be, I feel, much more scary than something on the land. So for that matter, I got to put just water in general at an A. That's probably a cheap entry, but whatever. Whatever. Moving right along to the creeper. I'm not talking about the Scooby-Doo guy either, alright? I'm not super afraid of Homeboy, I'm going to be honest. I used to be. He used to be a fear of mine. But he's more so a fear of time wasting, because he's going to fuck your shit up, so you're just going to have to rebuild like 8 blocks. It's not a huge deal anymore. Like, if you're playing hardcore, these guys are still a bitch. But past full armor, they're not going to really one-shot you, so I'm going to put him at D tier. I don't think he's super scary anymore. Once was. Oh, how the king has fallen. Let's go to Redead from Legend of Zelda. These guys appeared in several instances, but the first time I ever saw Homeboy here was in Super Smash Bros. Melee in the adventure mode. Because, you know, I was a peasant and didn't fucking play Ocarina of Time until much later. But even in Smash Bros, like, is it Sakurai? Who the guy who made Smash? Whoever did it, like, kept true to the form of Redeads, and they were fucking terrifying in that game. So even though I only really know them from Melee, I think I gotta put them pretty high up on the list. Because they groan and they moan. I'm gonna put them on B. We got these Siren Head OGs from BioShock Infinite. I think they're called, like, Warcry Boys or something. Officially, it's weird. They have a funny name. But this segment in BioShock Infinite, by far probably the scariest enemy in BioShock Infinite. I don't really remember that game all that well, but I remember this part because you kind of had to stealth around these guys. And I thought it was funny to just include this because it's kind of like the first rendition of the big Siren Head meme. I don't think he's super scary, but that segment in the game was pretty scary, so I'll put him over here in C tier. Let's go with the clicker from Left 4 Dead. Last of Us. I think these, at the time, were really good enemies. They stood out from the rest of them, and they made real loud, scary sound in your ear while you're trying to stealth.
Yeah, E-Miner, all right, yeah.
I think the idea that they can't see and they can only hear changes the gameplay a lot, and to benefit maybe the variety of the gameplay. So in that terms, I really think they're a great enemy, but I honestly don't think they're all that scary. I think maybe when I first played the game, they were terrifying, but maybe they're kind of on the same level as the creeper at this point. You know, just knock them out. Throw a little brick at it. On that same note, let's go with Gygus from Earthbound. I've never fought this dude mano a mano. It's on my to-do list before I pass. He's pretty creepy. There's a lot of speculation on what this guy is. I think he's just a demon from Zach Bagans' nightmares. He's caught this guy before. So in terms of that, I think he's got to go pretty high on the list. Also, he has a terrifying soundtrack that accompanies him. Ouch.
What's wrong?
Oh my god.
What's wrong?
Ouch.
And there's a pretty fucked up, I don't know if it's a creepypasta, myth, or actual truth about this guy floating online that he's like he was inspired by a fetus or something. So, see, I can't in good faith put him in A because I've never fought the guy myself. And I don't know if when I get to him, I'm going to be like shaking in my boots or not. Moving right along, let's get some brain from this guy. What are these guys called? Spitters? Strikers? Something, man. The guys from Resident Evil 2. These guys have all the muscle, no flesh. It's like all gas, no brakes, but all the muscle, no flesh. Cut that one out. This guy is pretty terrifying. I think they're still really terrifying, especially in the Resident Evil 2 remake. They're probably the scariest thing next to Another Lad, which we'll see a little later. I think they're pretty high up on my list, honestly. I think I'm going to throw them in A tier. I really don't like these guys, and they take a shit ton of damage, even on, like, the easier modes, to kill these guys. So, moving right along, let's cover our good old boy, Jack Baker, I think is his name, from Resident Evil 7. He is by far my favorite of the Baker household. The old lady, her boss fight was probably cooler than anything Jack had to offer. I think overall the amount of times Jack came back and just had another surprise up his sleeve, and the very first house scene right as you get up from the dinner table and he's kind of chasing around that initial very enclosed space. There's not a lot like that that'll make you, you know, pucker up and fucking really want to run out of there screaming. And then trying to do that shit in VR. Adios, amigo. I'm gonna leave him A for now because I feel like I have to maybe do one S, and I think I know what it is. There's a couple contenders. Let's do this one. Man-Bat from Arkham Knight, I believe, is where he's prominent in. While you're just exploring the open world, you can be grappling along, you know, doing Batman shit. Grapple up a building, you know, hit your little boost. Expect to really come flying up off the building just to glide again to get to your destination. It's very RNG oriented, but in certain cases when you grapple up a building, this guy will come out and, you know, Undertaker choke slam fucking Batman against the wall and be like, I'm you, but backwards. That, like, I didn't know about that when I played it, and it happened to me. So this guy kind of scarred me a little bit. You can catch up to him and, you know, beat the shit out of him, and by that point, he's not scary at all. But, hey, for a jump scare, that's probably one of the best I've ever seen in a video game. So for that fact, this guy is going up in B. Let's hit a classic. How about the magic piano from Mario 64? The devil piano, whatever you want to call it. I'd call it not that scary. I honestly think the eel from Mario 64 is much scarier than the piano. But I get why people are scared of it because unlike most other things in the game, like most other furniture in the game, this thing comes to life and attacks you. But honestly, given the theme of the level, what were you expecting? Not a killer piano? So I don't know. For that matter, I'm going to put it in C, to be honest. This guy's been staring at me for a while. I want to get him out of the way. It's your boy, Herobrine. I remember when Herobrine happened and believing it and was praying and hoping I could find Herobrine in my game. But alas, it was like L is real. He was not real. If you don't know about Herobrine, he was supposed to be this 1 in a million shot chance of you getting this NPC in your Minecraft world because, of course, Minecraft worlds are randomly generated, and you would get a chance of getting this little dude. And the telltale sign was like, if you're exploring your created like very new world, like no way anything could be there. If you started finding like random settlements, like or structures or something that looks very much like if a normal character would build them, that's when you knew Herobrine was in the game. Then the hunt was on. It's like trying to find Bigfoot. And if you caught a glimpse of him, I mean, you're on top of the world. But alas, it was just a creepypasta. One of the best, though, and it was even acknowledged by developers, update for the game in the notes, the update notes that came with the game. And the closest you can get to it is tricking your friends by getting a little Herobrine skin and fucking around with them. But the fact he never actually existed, and put him in E. Next, we have a spider. This isn't just any spider. This is a spider from Hunt Showdown, which is a great online multiplayer game that is kind of like a very small, organized team effort to go in and get these bounties and get out, but you're against other teams. So it's PvP, PvE, it's all the good shit. It's PV spiders, really, at the end of the day. And that is why this guy is on this list. He's by far, I think, the scariest one from that game. The Butcher you could put up there for sure. And there's been a few more that have been added that I'm not super familiar with yet. But overall, I still think the Spider's the scariest one because he just moves so damn quick. And I don't care, even if you don't have a spider phobia. I don't really, but when they start getting to like tarantula size, I start getting a little worried. The bigger they are, probably the less dangerous they are, but still, I don't like to see the hairs on my insects, you know? You gotta go into usually like very dark, dusty barns to fight this thing, and he's not coming out. So you gotta really face your fears, walk down some dark hallways, and just pump this dude with lead. I think he's A tier for that matter, honestly. The twins, the twin enemy from Silent Hill 4. I've never played Silent Hill 4, but this thing's fucking creepy. This was recorded a few days after all the Silent Hill stuff was announced, so whoo, can't wait. I'm a little worried about that remake just due to the studio, but I still have faith. It's looking pretty good. And then the new one, I'm pretty excited to see just what came out of PT from that. So anyway, I digress. This thing's fucking creepy. I don't really know much about it, but I assume it works a lot like the other enemies in Silent Hill, where it's a bitch and a half to kill. Way easier gonna kill you than it, so you better start running and have some tactics. It looks like this guy right here just has a fucking, like a pole or something, so he's pretty fucked. Just from the fact that I included this on this list just because of how scary it is, I'm gonna throw it in B. It would be an A probably if I had legitimately encountered this thing. But I haven't played Silent Hill 4 yet, unfortunately. Moving right along, Lady Dimitrescu. Resident Evil 8, it's a crowd pleaser for some. It's a shit game to others. I really loved the game. I think it like reinvented my hype for Resident Evil and that type of gameplay. Because it's a lot of inventory management. It's a lot of like, you gotta follow this very linear path. And I'm not always in the mood for that, but Resident Evil 8 really like, it made me want to play more Resident Evil. So I think in that sense, like, it's a great game. I think it's a little corny here and there. There's one boss that's just like, what are you guys doing? But we're not talking about him. We're talking about Lady Dimitrescu, which is the first boss. And it's the, going against the most. And I gotta say, she's pretty creepy. Just in terms of she's huge and she chases you. There's a few others on this list from Resident Evil games that do that as well. And probably do it better. Because she's not typically like super scary like Nemesis is or Mr. X, because she's just a bigger lady. But again, it kind of falls in the same vein for me as the spider from Hunt Showdown, where she's just big and she kind of moves quick. And if you're not expecting her and she walks in to a room and you're not expecting to run, it can be pretty fucking scary, like legit. And there's cutscenes in the game where she really fucks you up. Like, she fucks Ethan up. For that matter, I mean, I know I got a lot of B already, but she's going in B. I definitely think it's been done better, but she was alright. Alright, let's move right along to Lord Wu Fak Fak. Another Banjo-Tooie alumni. This character from Banjo-Tooie is the boss of the level that Fish we talked about earlier was from. And this guy's boss battle is pretty difficult because it takes place all underwater. And you kind of got to go into a locker to fight him. It's all kind of like backrooms-ish to me. I like barely remember this from my childhood because it's been a long time since I played Banjo-Tooie. But I remember Lord Wu Fak Fak being fucking creepy. I don't know if he's on the same level as that Fish. I guess he would be, but that would mean I have to put him in B. So I'm going to put him in C. He's definitely scary, but he's in a contained area, and you kind of just fight him and get out. The skin leg monster from the forest. Raise your hand if you're hyped for Forest 2 in the chat. When's that game coming out? Nah, I'm sure they're getting good shit done over there. I really enjoyed the forest. It's a great multiplayer game, and it's a great horror game. If you're looking for a good time, go exploring in the caves, and you'll never be the same, because you run into shit like this. Several arms, several legs, just sewn together fucking monsters. There's a lot to explore in that game. I kind of don't even want to say more because you should just go and play it. If you haven't played The Forest, and even if you're not into like survival games like that, I'm not huge into those types of games, but just follow, like, build you a little shack, just get you a little weapon, get you a little drink, get you a little food, and then go exploring in a cave. Bring a light, and then you'll really find out what the game has to offer, I feel like. And it's a game where when you go back into it, it feels like you still have more to discover. Like, I never beat the game, so I still know there's a lot more fucked up shit like that to see. So I'm going to put this thing in, I'm going to put it in A, just to represent Forest as a horror game as whole, because it also has, like, very, like, the water in that game. You can never catch me swimming in that game ever, man. It's creepy. Along that same note, this is one of the contenders for my S tier. What is this? What is this fucking clip art of a shark you put on the screen? If you know, you know, alright? Shark hunting the great white for PC back in the day. This was before PETA was all up in everybody's business. This was when shark poaching was the hot biz. and people were making video games about it. In reality, this game was a great PC game that I remember from my childhood. Like, I played the fuck out of this game. It was like this and Mario, dude. And I remember being so scared. This is definitely where I got my thalassophobia from. My fear of the ocean and the unknown in the ocean comes from this game. And that's because the game is just stock full of content. You go through a bunch of different levels. Well, how different could a shark hunting game be? Very different. You go into nighttime dives. You go into dives where it's daytime, but by the time you get down there, you can't fucking see. There's a lot of variety here. And every time you're finding and hunting a different shark, leading up to the final level featuring this guy. It's a megalodon. You know, the giant ancient shark. You get to fight one mano a mano. The level is as simple as it could be. It's a boat, you chain down to a cage, and then once you're down at the bottom of the ocean, the level's featured in, you fight this thing. But all you really get as a guide is to chain down to the very bottom of the ocean. And at any point while you're following this chain, the shark could be at any point in the level. This thing's way bigger than, like, it's supposed to be to scale of a human being. I don't know how accurate it actually is, but in terms of first person, like, this thing's huge. This is definitely going into A tier. It's a contender for S. I think I'll throw it in S for now because I have my other S in mind that we still haven't talked about. But the Megalodon from Shark Hunting the Great White. Like, you want to talk about people like having PTSD from that piano from Mario 64. That was that for me, man. Alright, we're just slimming down here. I'm taking a little bit longer than I thought I would be for this. So I'm going to be skating through the rest of these. I'm going to go ahead and put this guy down here. I don't think I've really talked about it, but I kind of loathe the Five Nights at Freddy's series. Just, I don't think they're that scary. I think they depend too much on jump scares and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, like, obviously, all the negative things anybody's ever said about FNAF. But I still feel them. I'm putting Freddy Fazbear at F. It stands. Look, Freddy, it's just too perfect. Next, we have the baby from Resident Evil 8. This made the whole second part of the game, the second boss, the dollhouse, so much more memorable and so much more scary. You're defenseless against this thing, really. It's a situation where you gotta, like, use tables to get around it, like a bad episode of Walking Dead. It's a lot like that, where you kind of gotta use the environment to your advantage because you can't kill the thing. Because I don't think you have weapons. Even if you do have weapons, I don't know if... It's been a while since I played the game, so I don't quite remember. Yeah, you can't fight the thing, so you kind of gotta, like, wait it out, hide from it, take shortcuts around it, and the whole time you can hear it wailing and crying, and the fact it just looks like that, and if it gets you, there's a really disturbing cutscene where it just eats Ethan. It's a great enemy. It's great enemy design. I mean, like, the fact we still get designs from Resident Evil in this day and age that look like that, like, that's how I know the series is still alive and well. That's some good shit right there. I gotta put it in A. I truly do think it's the scariest thing from that game. The eel from Mario 64 and the remade version in Mario Odyssey is a thing of terror. Now that I see the re-render of it in Mario Odyssey, I do think the original design was on purpose because this thing still looks terrifying. And I get they kind of modeled it after Super Mario 64. I think the original intention for this eel was to be terrifying. I don't think it was like graphical limitations or anything. I think Miyamoto just wanted to scare the shit out of a bunch of people. And like I said earlier, I think this also has something to do with the fact it took place underwater. And this was a lot of people's first experience with 3D underwater level. So running into that eel, like, I mean, it's just scarring. So for that matter, I'm going to put it in B. Moving along, we got the ghost dude from DKC2. I included this guy just because I love Donkey Kong Country, especially the second one. I don't think he's all that scary, but I remember this sprite specifically as a kid kind of frightening me. Probably the scariest thing from that game. He's not all that frightening. I'll put him down here with Herobrine. Sorry, dude. Next we have is, I think her name's Lisa from Evil Within. I love Evil Within and Evil Within 2. Matter of fact, dude. So, I added somebody. We'll talk about him next. Lisa's from the first game. She's this spider lady boss that you kind of got to take out with fire, I think. But both of the games are amazing. They have more enemies than just these two that are terrifying. The guy with the safe on his head. But I do believe Lisa's probably the scariest thing from Evil Within. You fight her pretty early on in the game, so for that matter, she's not super hard to beat, and she's kind of on a linear path, that type of boss battle. She has physics where I feel like I remember her shaking a lot. I'm going to put Lisa in C tier, just because I think they took that idea and amplified it for this one. This is the Ghost, which I believe is a full side mission in Evil Within 2 that you don't even have to do. I could be wrong about that. It might be main story stuff, but Evil Within 2 like mixed in a little bit of open world, if I remember right. It's also been a little bit since I played that one. You would enter an area she was like monitoring, and if she saw you, you'd like get enveloped into a whole separate area to take you out of the world and put you into, I think it was usually a mental asylum, maybe the one from the first game, and she would be hunting you, and it'd be like kind of like you just got to get to the other end. The only thing standing in your way is this twitchy ass ghost. And yeah, she's twitching all around. I think her name's Amara or something. It's the thing I remember most from Evil Within 2. I remember the final boss was pretty gnarly too. Easily A tier. I think Lisa probably deserves B, but I feel like I'm putting too many in B. Let's move on to Big Daddy from BioShock. I think the splicers are probably more scary than the Big Daddies. The loud like groans and stuff, I could still see how that'd be a little bit eerie, but overall they're kind of easy to kill when you know what you're doing. If you set traps for them and everything, they're kind of pushovers. So I think I'm gonna throw them in E tier with a couple of these fellas down here. We're getting close. Let's talk about this guy. This is the Brute from Dead Space. It's hard to tell because most of the necromorphs from Dead Space look very similar to one another. But this is a Brute. I decided not to include necromorphs as a whole just because there's so many. And maybe if I do a part 2 to this one day, I can go into more detail because there are specific necromorphs. But I chose 2 today to include on this list. If I had to compare this to something, it'd be the tank from Left 4 Dead. This is definitely that of the Dead Space world. And it even takes out one of my favorite characters in the game. Without spoiling too much, when you first go against them, I mean, you really got to give it your all. And there's several points in the game where this guy's just fucking shit up and you got to deal with it. And it's fucked. So for that matter, this guy's going in A. I got to no, I'll put him in B. He's not super scary. He's just intimidating. Because there is a far more scary thing in Dead Space, which we will talk about soon. But for now, he'll go in B. Let's talk about Lisa. I think her name's Lisa. This is the ghost from PT. This image right now is scaring me. I don't like the fact that it looks like she's staring into my soul. So we're gonna put the granny over her face for now, because it's honestly creeping me out, just her staring into my soul. That specific screenshot is from when she's above the staircase and you can find her just peering down upon you. If you don't know, PT was the playable teaser for the new Silent Hill game that got canceled. I was talking about it earlier because I'm interested to see what elements of that are going to be brought into the new Silent Hill game. But she was the main enemy from that, and I gotta say, I mean, just terrifying. Probably on the same level as the ghost from Evil Within 2, if not better. I would throw it into S tier, but I'm already fighting for that position as it is. I think she's going to go in A. And to make a ghost that scary, I mean, these two, I mean, they're so overdone, ghosts in video games. For these two to be that high on the list, I mean, bravo. Moving right along, let's talk about the granny from Resident Evil 7. Probably next to the creepiest, next to Jack Baker, is Granny Baker. I don't remember her official name. It's probably Dorothy. She served as the true final boss to the game. Spoilers. I think her scariness really comes through her sightings early on in the game. You'll always find her just kind of almost not breathing in a corner, and you'll walk up to her and you can tell she's alive, but fucking barely. And she's always there, and then when you come back, she's not. She's like Batman in that way, but a very scary old Batman. The fact that she serves no real purpose up until the end of the game, it really adds an aura of mystery to this character. I think it kept the game grounded in a certain sense in terms of its horror. Like, sure, you can have these bombastic boss battles, but you can also have moments where it's a simple just remove this character and all of a sudden you're like, wait, Granny was there, wasn't she? Fuck. Because she's fully paralyzed and yet she moved. I don't know, man. I think for that matter, she's got to go at least in B. Moving right along, we got Pyramid Head from Silent Hill. This guy single-handedly gave me probably my biggest jump scare, and it was recorded. I was playing this as a Let's Play. It was my first time playing Silent Hill 2. And all I heard was the dragging of his big fucking knife. And then all of a sudden, he just came out of nowhere. don't even try fighting him. Like, it doesn't explicitly say that, but you know not to even try to fuck with this guy. Even his presence in the game like Dead by Daylight, I mean, he's definitely one of the more scary killers in that game. I think he's definitely got to go in A. Let's do Nemesis next. Out of the two, I definitely say I'd like Mr. X a little bit better than Nemesis, and I find Mr. X definitely more scary than Nemesis, but I think in a way, I feel like I should find Nemesis more scary. I think it's the utilization of Mr. X in Resident Evil 2 versus how they utilize Nemesis in Resident Evil 3. Yeah, he looks fucked up, he's pretty scary in that fact, but he's more of just like a super soldier, whereas Mr. X is like, feels like he's gonna fuck you up. I think it's the setting, like you're fighting Mr. X in much closer corridors in the police department versus out on the street. Of course, it's still an enclosed area, it's still very linear, you still gotta dodge Nemesis. I think it's just the setting. I found Resident Evil 2 much scarier than Resident Evil 3 for that matter, and honestly, I gotta put my boy Nemesis pretty low. I think I'll put him down in D with the clickers. Next to last is Mr. X. I just talked at length kind of about him. I think his entrance in the game is way better than Nemesis. When you first see Mr. X, he's doing some fuck shit, man. And then his entrance to actually running from him is just tearing apart a helicopter. If you don't think you gotta run from that guy after that, like, you got problems and you're gonna die. And the fact that he's so brooding and he's so much bigger than the doors, I think I gotta put him in A. I think he does it better than Lady Dimitrescu. I think out of all of these, maybe he's on the same level as Jack, in my opinion. I think Mr. X does it the best. Lastly, we got the Hunter from Dead Space, y'all. This is my contender for S tier. It's pretty lame, I feel like. I feel like people are not going to be happy with my contenders for S tier, but this is my S tier. It's got to be personal. This guy, I mean, beyond all, I think, in video game history, bosses, enemies, anything, this guy has terrified me more, because a simple fact of, like, all of the necromorphs in Dead Space are terrifying, but the fact that they die and they stay dead is a great thing. Like, no matter what, you got enough ammo to take them all out, you're gonna be straight. Even the Brute, that's why I kind of put him in B tier, because you're gonna be able to kill him at some point. That's the problem with this guy. He keeps coming back, and like literally though. You can shoot his legs off, that'll work for a little bit, but homies like Patrick Star, he'll come back in a matter of seconds. It's the setting in which you fight him in also helps this character a lot. It's very, very small rooms, very tight corridors where you gotta take the extra seconds to shoot off his legs, otherwise you're done, you're gonna be over. He kills Isaac in a matter of seconds. And the fact that he's just gonna keep coming back, there's several scenarios where you think he did it, you think he killed him, and he comes back for more. It's like Terminator in that way. To capture that in a video game, and a video game that only lasts like at most 15 hours, the fact that he comes back not once, but I think even twice or 3 times, and every time you see him, you're like, no fucking way. Like, I remember verbally reacting to every time I saw this guy come on screen, and still, like, I cannot wait for the Dead Space remake to come out just to re-experience this enemy. And I hope the Callisto Protocol has something like this as well, because it needs it. If it doesn't have it, I'm going to be a little bit disappointed, because a character like this in a setting like that, it's like peanut butter and fucking jelly, dude. I think this is definitely my S tier. After talking about it, you can still kill the Megalodon, and I feel like that's a point in the Hunter's direction for being the scariest enemy I've ever faced. I think there is a point in which you do technically kill him, and there is a version of him that comes back in Dead Space 2, but I find him way scarier in Dead Space 1. And I believe you actually do end up killing him, but who actually knows? He kept coming back. Why wouldn't he come back for another time? Regardless, I think this is my official tier list for the ones I picked out anyway of scary video game characters, enemies more so. Let me know what you guys think. This has been my second tier list video, I think. So if you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like down below. And let me know if you want to see more of these, or just tell me to stick to icebergs if you think I should do that. So.